Hello there, whoop. Hello there, everybody, and welcome back to Circling Seattle Sports on Converge Media here in the middle of the month of August. It's getting hot out there, and that includes some hot playoff races. The preseason continuing for the Seahawks. They got their first preseason game, which you only take so much stock into, if you know what I mean. A bunch of our teams are still playing, and even for the teams that aren't, off seasons are kind of getting toward their end. So, we're going to continue here. We're going to go right into what we talked about right at the top there with the preseason and the Seahawks. The Seahawks this past Thursday host the Minnesota Vikings at Lumen Field for their first preseason game of 3 ahead of the 2023 campaign. They would win that one 24-13. They came back to win that one, actually. They were trailing going into the half. Geno Smith and most of the starters did not see any action whatsoever. So it was mainly on a bunch of the guys who were looking to prove themselves in a roster spot or really, for some of them, knock the rust off. In this one, we're going to look straight at some of the statistics. On the offensive side of the ball, Jake Bobo has been, outside of the interesting last name, has been getting a lot of attention at training camp and has gotten storylines about whether he can be the 4th wide receiver on the depth chart for this Seahawks team, even before the news that we got last week about D. Eskridge. So Bobo had, again, limited sample size, and this isn't going to mean a ton because there's always that big player in the preseason that fans will get drawn to, and then he doesn't end up making the team and so on and so forth. But Bobo put up a nice performance here, helped the Seahawks in their comeback effort, and was able to get the 3 catches. Again, has pushed D. Eskridge in training camp for that 4th wide receiver spot on the depth chart. But again, don't want to take too much stock in it. D. Eskridge situation is still being assessed by the team, so on and so forth. With the 3 catches, 55 yards, and 1 TD for Bobo. On the defensive side of the ball, kind of looked around here to see who stood out from these games, right? Because there's no real starter that was playing. Devin Bush had some good tackles in this game, and he got some good reviews. Army man John Radigan had the most total tackles of this team. Kobe Bryant has switched from cornerback to safety, and he was up there as well. There was no interceptions in this one, so nothing like that to look at per se. But Levi Bell, linebacker, pass rusher, whatever you'd like to choose, I thought had an interesting performance. 3 solo tackles, 1 sack, a tackle for loss, and 3 quarterback hits, which is the most on the team for this game. So nice performance by Levi Bell. Again, these are the games where guys like Bell, like Bobo, can go out and make that sort of effort to get themselves a roster spot, really, and go out there, prove themselves, maybe it's depth, bottom of the depth chart, or practice squad, the word I'm looking for, practice squad for these guys, and maybe they end up making an impact. You look at a guy like Doug Baldwin. Doug Baldwin was an undrafted free agent. He had to work his way on, started with special teams, so stuff like that is where players can make an impact. We look at more of these stats here. Jackson Smith-Njigba is a guy to kind of keep an eye on, and it was someone I was looking to see more from. Had 3 catches here in this game for 25 yards, so not bad, again, and still playing with some of the backup quarterbacks. Backup quarterbacks. Drew Lock was the guy who started this game for Seattle. 2 touchdowns on the game and an interception. He did get sacked once. The tough part with Drew Lock is there was a lot of excitement about this performance, and he did some good things. But through, I believe it's 5 games that he's played with Seattle, all in total, including preseason. It might just be 5 preseason games. Drew Lock has 5 touchdowns and 5 turnovers. So you want to take care of the football. That's Pete Carroll's big thing. But he's still a serviceable backup, and that's all you really need him to be. Holton Ahlers had an interesting game. He only threw 4 passes. He completed all 4 of them for 43 yards and a touchdown. But he was the team's second leading rusher in this game behind Brian Kobach out of Toledo. Ahlers had 6 carries for 26 yards and a long of 22. So interesting there. Zach Charbonnet, he only got 4 carries for 14 yards, but was getting some good reviews there. Physical bruising back that had been talked about in this offseason when he was drafted. So that was something to keep an eye on. It was a little bit scary in this ballgame as we move over from the game discussion itself and kind of talk about injuries and team-related things. During that game, Cade Johnson, a wide receiver, in his second year with the team, was transported to Harborview Medical Center to be evaluated for head and neck injuries, but he was in stable condition. He was released from the hospital the following day, but is in concussion protocol. So good to hear that the hospital stay was more of a precautionary measure than anything else. We look at team-related news and roster, of course. Again, I talked about it last week with training camp coming around. It's going to be roster moves, guys up and down, the same names here and there. On the 8th, the team signed defensive end Jordan Ferguson and waived cornerback Andrew Whitaker with an injury designation. On the 9th, the team signed nose tackle Anthony Montalva and waived outside linebacker Josh Onunogju. There was the news about Cade Johnson, of course, that I mentioned. And then on August 12th, the team signed wide receiver Rashawn Henry, who you can see pictured on your screen, and waived nose tackle Robert Cooper. That is about it for the Seahawks. Again, it was very interesting. We talked about it. I want to say it was last year, but it might have been 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago, where the team had Kason Williams of the University of Washington really burst out in the preseason, have great games, and then he was a part of roster cuts, and people, there was not happy reactions when it came to him getting released. So yeah, so on and so forth. Again, it'll be interesting if Jake Bobo is able to continue this performance, again, from training camp into the games. And he's got his second chance to do so when the Seahawks host their second and last hosting preseason game. They'll go on the road for their third one, August 19th at home at Lumen Field versus the Dallas Cowboys. That is a 7 o'clock Pacific time start. Again, it'll be interesting not only to see the performances of guys who have been standouts in training camp. We probably won't see much of the starters at all, maybe a drive or so, but I imagine Pete Carroll and the Seahawks, especially with the 3 preseason games as opposed to the 4, will be getting in a lot of the guys that they want to get looks at, the backups, the reserves, guys that are not at the top of the depth chart. So head over now to the Seattle Mariners. Now, the past series in particular across this 5-game homestand got a lot of interesting reactions after it ended. So we'll get to that. But it did start positively, as you'll see here with the broom. The Mariners completed a 2-game sweep of the San Diego Padres. August 8th versus the Padres, a 2-0 win. Our player of the game, pictured in this photo of the game by Matthew Bermudez, Logan Gilbert. Logan going into his Walter alter ego for this game. 7 innings pitched, 1 hit allowed, no runs, no walks, and 12 strikeouts. It's a career high in strikeouts for Logan. Just an all-around strong effort. It was a not so successful game on the offensive side of the ball for the Mariners, but again, this is something that you kind of come to expect with this team. And the Padres do have some quality pitching on their staff as well, so it's not like this was too much of a disappointment. Obviously, again, you'd like to go out and do well on offense, considering how poor this team has done in general. But all in all, again, not too shabby. Could have been worse. Logan Gilbert in that game became the first right-handed pitcher to strike out Juan Soto 3 times in a game. Juan Soto did have a golden sombrero in that game. If you don't know, golden sombrero is 4 strikeouts by a singular player across the stretch of one game. And then I'm trying to find another piece of history there for Logan Gilbert, because Logan was rock solid in this game. I I will go back here. It was his 13th quality start of the season. It's the 7th time in franchise history a starter had an outing with 7 innings plus, no runs, 1 or fewer hits, and 10 strikeouts, being the last to do so, Ronaldinho, in 2015. I'm trying to find, there was one about Felix. Shoot. See if I can find it here. Yes. All right, here it is. It was, that outing was only the second performance in team history of 10 plus strikeouts, no walks, with 1 or fewer hits allowed. Only 2 times that's been done. The other one to do it, Felix Hernandez, who the Mariners were honoring that weekend. So we'll get to that weekend in a second. August 9th versus the Padres to complete the sweep, a 6-1 win. Some more offense there. Play of the game, catcher Cal Raleigh. Cal, 2 hits, 1 run, and 2 RBIs. Cal hit a 2-run homer late to help the Mariners kickstart a big insurance blast of runs in the late innings. Our photo of the game here by Liz Walter captures Julio Rodriguez going around the bases. Julio being scored by Cal on the 2-run homer, showing some excitement there. So it's fun in that one to see the expression. But also, if we go back here to this game 2 of the series 2-game set, Emerson Hancock made his major league debut. 5 innings pitched, 2 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, and 3 strikeouts. Obviously, I want to work on the walks there, but 5 innings, 2 hits, not bad whatsoever from a guy who's getting called up from AA. That makes it the 3rd pitching prospect that the Mariners have called up this season in terms of the starting rotation, behind Bryce Miller, Brian Wu, and now Emerson. So strong performance there overall in that 2-game set against the Padres, both standing at the pitching standpoint. You know, game 1, you would like to score more than 2 runs. But, you know, Logan Gilbert, Emerson Hancock, and then the bullpen as well were big. The 3 big stars for the Padres in Manny Machado, Fernando Tatis Jr., and Juan Soto, and you can include Xander Bogaerts, but it's not as fun, went 0 for 22, I believe it was, in that game. And Soto had 4 strikeouts in that game. So, across those 2 games. So, yeah, that was nice to take care of business. The Mariners take the Vetter Cup this year. They had a day off on Thursday before they welcomed the best team in the American League, the Baltimore Orioles, to town. And things started off well in game 1 of the 3-game series. They would win the August 11th contest 9-2. Our play of the game center fielder, Julio Rodriguez. Julio, 2 hits, 1 run, and 4 RBIs in this game. Just unfortunate that really weren't able to continue it, but the big performance on offense really they jumped all over Kyle Gibson for Baltimore, and the pitching was strong once again. So you thought, okay, you know, it's probably unlikely that you go and put up the same sort of offensive production in game 2, let alone the rest of the series. And that would be true. You can see on your screen, game 2, they would lose that one on the 12th, 0-1. Our play of the game, well, before I get to play of the game, that was Felix's induction ceremony. King Felix was inducted as the 11th member of the Mariners Hall of Fame here in this photo by Liv Lyons, getting his Hall of Fame jacket for the franchise being put on by the great Ken Griffey Jr. A very emotional day there. You know, one of the most beloved Mariners of all time. Spent all 15 years of his career here. You know, never really got enough support from his team around him, which is by no means his fault. And then Felix is an emotional guy anyway. He started crying as soon as he came out of the bullpen in left field when they introduced him. So all very deserved, though. All of this sort of fan fest and fanfare throughout the weekend for Felix is very, very well earned. So that was before the game. The game itself was unfortunate. The Mariners would get runners on base. They just weren't able to score them. They went 0 for 10 with runners in scoring position. They lose this game, and they waste an excellent performance by our player of the game, pitcher George Kirby. Kirby, as seen in this photo of the game by Liv Lyons, 9 innings pitched. Yes, he pitched all 9 innings. So if the Mariners had given him any run support whatsoever, he would have had a complete game. 3 hits allowed, no runs, no walks, and 7 strikeouts. So in George Kirby typical form, he doesn't give up a walk. The 3 hits he allowed were all on their own individual time, so they never really threatened. The Orioles never really threatened against George Kirby, and George was masterful, absolutely masterful. It's the second time that Kirby has gone 8 innings plus, 8 scoreless innings and hasn't gotten any run support, which is very frustrating. Game 3 of this series, we're going to talk about frustrating here. Well, I guess it's time to put the photo on the screen. Scott Service being ejected in this ball game and showing some frustration with third base umpire Adam Beck, who called a balk call on Andres Munoz, which would later play a role in Jorge Mateo scoring the go-ahead run in the top of the ninth for Baltimore. He would get ejected for arguing that call. Manny Acta would take over as the acting manager. The Mariners would lose this game 3-5. Our player of the game, right fielder Dominic Canzone. Canzone only had one hit on the day, but it was an important one. One hit, 1 run, 1 RBI. Canzone hit an absolute tank shot of a homer into right field off the former Hit It Here Cafe glass. Just an at-bat after Ty France had potentially hit the game-tying home run, but was robbed by Cedric Mullins. So all of the emotion went down and went back up when Canzone hit that homer. We go into 10 innings. Cedric Mullins hits a 2-run homer to right field, and the Mariners aren't able to respond. So they would lose that series 2-1 to the Baltimore Orioles to close out that homestand with a 3-3 record. 3-2 record over the 5 games. I can count, I promise. Our player of the week, offense wasn't really too spectacular. And with the sort of performance that George has had in this game and kind of has had all season, I had to go with George. That 9-inning game to go out there, and he was efficient too. It's not like he was pumping into the high 100s or mid 100s or low 100s with his outing. George was able to be efficient with his pitches and thus was able to go deep into the ball game. And he's had a great year. His 3 WAR, a 10-8 record, a 3.11 ERA, 131 strikeouts, and a 1.002 whip. Now I want to see where he stacks up actually on the Mariners in terms of we'll get this going here in terms of WAR, because he's pretty high on this list. Let's see, where is he? Yeah, he's 3rd on the list in total WAR, and is a pitcher behind JP Crawford and Julio Rodriguez. So very, very valuable to this team and what they're doing. I get it. You should have won games 2 and 3 and should have had a sweep of the Baltimore Orioles, the best team in all of the American League. Not all of baseball, the American League. These are games you should have won. Yes, you should have swept the homestand. I get that. The 8-game winning streak would end in game 2 against the Orioles. You're now a game and a half back of the Toronto Blue Jays for that last wild card spot. But it's not like the world has ended. The reaction to this game from a lot of the fan base was essentially that this was the worst thing ever, and that the season was over, and that they squandered the biggest opportunity of all time. The Mariners very well can get back into that playoff spot that they had the day of that second game of the Baltimore series, and they've got the rest of the month of August. Now I say that, and I'm knock on wood, optimistic about it, because when we look at the Mariners schedule with that road trip that begins today in Kansas City against the Royals who are, by the way, the 2nd worst team in all of baseball record-wise, the Mariners will go on the road now for 10 games, and then we'll get to the homestand after that 10-game road trip, because it's beneficial as well. And this is granted that the Mariners take care of business, which they need to. They played great, focused baseball for a good amount of this series against the Orioles, who just weren't able to put up enough runs, which is something we've been talking about for the entirety of the season. But they play 4 games against the Kansas City Royals, again, who have the 2nd worst record in all of baseball behind the Oakland Athletics. They go on the road to play the Houston Astros for 3 games over the course of the weekend, which I knock on wood again, because they have been good against Houston this year. And then they close out that road trip with 3 games against the White Sox, who have been the 3rd worst team by record in all of baseball. So that's a big opportunity on this road trip. Arguably, over the course of the road trip, over the course of the 10 games, you should win 7 of those games, right? And then they close out. They get a day off on the 24th after that road trip ends. They have a 5-game series to close out the month of August, a 5-game homestand. To close the month of August, 3 against those Royals that we talked about. Again, 2nd worst record in all of baseball. and then they host the Oakland Athletics for 3 games, and they're the worst record in all of baseball. So you're playing the 3 worst teams record-wise in all of baseball from today to the 30th of August. It's 5, 10, 15 games over the 16 days that you can insert yourself back into the playoff picture and, hold yourself there as opposed to just being a half game in. So I really don't think it's that, big dramatic problem that a lot of people are making it. Mariners Twitter is its own issue. I'm not going to call it X. It does suck. Well, we'll have to get to the injury news first before we reveal anything else. You're missing a player that you're going to need throughout that Houston series for sure. But it's the offense as a whole needs to step up. Over the course of that 8-game winning streak, you'll see that all of that was the players that have been here already. And what have I talked about the entire season so far is that this team, if they're going to make a push, if they're going to do anything successful this season, it's going to be internal. It's going to be the guys that they already have here flipping the switch. And that's what we've seen to a large extent. Julio's picked things up. Eugenio's picked things up. Cal Raleigh's been hitting the ball well, So it's got to be internal, and it has been. But, with the last 2 losses, you don't want to let those compound and then struggle for the rest of the year. Since July 1st began, you've been solid, really solid offensively. You need to continue that, especially over the fortunate stretch that you're going to have to close out the month of August. So we get into injury-related news here. On the 8th, the team placed right-handed pitcher Brian Wu on the 15-day injured list with right forearm inflammation. That is why Emerson Hancock had to come up and make his major league debut. The Mariners had been talking about a 6-man rotation before the news about Wu being injured as to monitor the innings of both Wu and Bryce Miller. But now with Hancock up, that kind of takes that out of the equation. It's not out of the picture that we see that later, as it was talked about that Emerson Hancock was supposed to join this rotation at some point this year. They had planned to get him big league innings, and now he'll do so. So the injury that I was talking about right there at the end of the overall series discussion was that on August 11th, shortstop J.P. Crawford was placed on the 7-day injured list with a concussion. It was suffered on the 9th against the Padres in Game 2 of that series. Both J.P. and Eugenio Suarez went for a ground ball in their general direction. They both went for it. There was no call off, and J.P.'s head collided with Eugenio's shoulder. Had him down on the ground for a bit. He played in for a few more innings, but ultimately decided, hey, I feel horrible. I shouldn't keep going. He seemed in good spirits when we saw him on the clubhouse on the 11th, but he is on the 7-day IL. The closest day, the first day that it can come back is the 4th game against the Royals there on the 17th. That is the series finale against Kansas City. I wouldn't doubt that the Mariners hold him out till the first game of the series against the Astros the next day, just because, again, they should be able to handle business against the Royals. So we look over here, and the third and final sort of injury update that we got here was that on August 13th, left-handed pitcher Marco Gonzalez will be out for the rest of the season. He confirmed before the game on the 13th. It isn't going to be a long recovery. According to Marco, it's a clean-out procedure, much shorter than a repair procedure like a tendon repair. Tommy John being that sort of thing. That was the big worry, that it wasn't Tommy John surgery. Marco expects to be able to go through his normal ramp-up procedure and is planning and should be good to go for the regular start to spring training. Marco was diagnosed with an anterior interosseous nerve, AIN syndrome, anterior interosseous nerve syndrome, a rare, less than 1% of all cases, syndrome that is associated with overuse injuries but is not heavily documented amongst Major League Baseball pitchers. In AIN syndrome, the nerve that controls pronation for one's wrist and finger, which is obviously then pretty important for a pitcher, is compressed and requires surgery to relieve the pressure on that nerve. The last that we got a few days ago in a injury update from Mariners general manager Justin Hollander is that they still hadn't been able to take the pressure off of that nerve. So they're going to go out, clean that out, and Marco should be ready by the start of spring training next season. So there are some roster moves that have come as a result of these moves, these injuries. On the 8th, Ryder Ryan, right-handed pitcher, now in the bullpen, was recalled from AAA Tacoma. Right-handed pitcher Ryan Jensen was claimed off of waivers from the Chicago Cubs. And right-handed pitcher Matt Fessa was designated for assignment. He did clear waivers, and he is now a free agent. On the 11th, infielder/outfielder Sam Haggerty was recalled from AAA Tacoma as a corresponding move to the J.P. Crawford injury. Haggerty, since being sent down, had bat .319, a .319 batting average through 42 games with the Rainiers, which is pretty good. So we look ahead. The Mariners have a 63-win, 54-loss record at this current point in time, third in the American League West, 6.5 games back from the top of the division where the Texas Rangers currently sit, and a game and a half back from the wild card where the Toronto Blue Jays sit. Their next 4 games, as I mentioned, starting today against the Kansas City Royals, August 14th through 16th, are all 5:10 Pacific time starts. That sounds a little bit odd. I'm going to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that is correct. Oh, shoot. Yes, all 3 of those games are 5:10 starts, and then the series finale on the 17th is an 11:10 a.m. start. Then, as I mentioned, after that Royal series, they head down to Houston for 3 games. August 18th is a 5:10 start. August 19th is a 4:10 start, and then August 20th is a 10:05 a.m. start on Sunday to close out that 3-game series against the Houston Astros. So the Mariners, again, have a very, very fortunate sort of schedule to work through. So, yeah, it's a very fortunate schedule, as I mentioned. It's really just thinking about it. They have to execute. The offense has to be able to get on base and then drive in the traffic that they've been able to cause because the pitching has been excellent all season long. So we will look over here. To the Seattle Storm, who hosted, the first 3 games of a 4-game homestand. I'm stumbling a little bit here. First 3 games of a 4-game homestand here at Climate Pledge Arena started with the Connecticut Sun, a loss 69-81. Very unfortunate because it's not like the Storm played horrible. They started off well, and then things kind of fell apart after a big second quarter for the Sun. You'll see our photo of the game here by Chris Liu. Our play of the game in this August 8th loss, center Ezi Magbagor. Ezi, 10 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 blocks. So a tough one there to begin the homestand snaps. There was no winning streak because the Storm had gone down to Phoenix and beat the Mercury before this home game started, so they weren't able to make it 2 in a row. August 10th, though, the Storm would get back into the win column, beating the Atlanta Dream with a fiery comeback. It was a physical game throughout the first 3 quarters, lots of fouls. Seattle had really shot the ball poorly, and Atlanta hadn't shot the ball much better. But a big comeback in the fourth quarter, including 7 minutes of holding Atlanta scoreless, meant that the Storm were able to get back in this game, and they win it by a point. Our play of the game, once again, Ezi Magbagor, 17 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal, and 2 blocks. And just because she's our player of the game doesn't mean that someone else didn't have a great game. As you can see here in this photo by Matthew Bermudez, Jewel Lloyd had a nice and important impact down the stretch for this Storm team, including a big 3-pointer and 1, as you can see in this photo here, and then a driving layup and 1 to wait. Yes. No. Well, at least the driving layup gave the Storm their first lead of the game. So that was the first win. The second win in a row for the Storm was against those Phoenix Mercury that they played a few games ago on WNBA rivalry night. Our Storm would come out victorious 81-71. A nice first half for the Storm in this one. A little bit of a lull in the third quarter, which we have unfortunately seen throughout the course of the season. But they were able to pick things up, turn them around, and close this game out in the fourth quarter. Our play of the game guard, Jewel Lloyd. Jewel, 24 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. And our photo of the game here by Liz Walter. Ezi, another great game. It was her birthday that day. She turned 24 years old. I said 24 points. Not correct. All this talk about Ezi. She is our player of the week. as he, over the course of the past 3 games, 14.6 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game, 1 steal, and 2.3 blocks per game on the past week of games, 3 games set to begin a 4-game homestand. So it's very interesting to see that the Storm team has won 5 of their last 7. Their second half has been good. If we measured just the second half, they'd be in a playoff spot, but it's not how that works. They're doing all this. We'll get to these 2 pieces of news, and you already saw a little bit of it, but they're doing this without some key players that, played significant roles throughout the first half. Well, one of them played a significant role through the first half of the season. The other had just been finding her stride. And we are seeing here, it's very good to see the development of some of these young players, what we talked about at the beginning of the season. And through the course of the season, Jordan Horson is back in the starting lineup. Jaden Melbourne's getting important minutes and has been entrusted with those down the stretch. So that's important for this team. Dulcie has been starting for a while now. So a lot of that draft class is really factoring in, funny enough, after the Storm really haven't had a rookie on their team the last few years. So it's important to see them make this progress. They're doing better in the paint as of lately. Got to work on the turnovers. That's not been so great. They shot over 50% from the field in that win over the Mercury. So positive building blocks into next season is what I'm looking for from the Storm throughout the rest of the year. And they're doing that so far. There are going to be moments where they lapse, sure, but it's encouraging to see, and it makes it more fun. So we look here, the injury report versus the Sun was clean, but during that game in the second quarter, Gabby Williams left the game with a left foot injury. It would be announced the next day that she suffered a left foot fracture and will miss 4 to 6 weeks, effectively ending her season as the Storm close out the regular season on September 10th. So unfortunate to have lost Gabby to injury here. She had dealt with a concussion with her team in France before she joined the Storm this season. So it's not really been a good physical year for Gabby. Sheesh. And it's also unfortunate, too, because she had just been finding her stride on the offensive side of the ball. But she has been around the last 2 games to support her teammates, which is very nice. The injury report versus the Dream and Mercury would be clean outside of Williams. She will be on the injury report for the rest of the year, but it's not like she's going to be able to play. On the 10th of August, the team released point guard Ivana Dojkic, allowing her to begin preparations for her upcoming season of competition in Europe, which is interesting. Dojkic hadn't been getting very many minutes in the weeks prior to this announcement, and it sounded like this was not something that the Storm were aware of, this overseas commitment, and so it opens up a roster spot. It hasn't been filled yet. The Storm haven't decided to fill that out yet. When asked about it, it sounded like they're happy with the group that they currently have, but I wouldn't doubt that Seattle goes out and kicks the tires on a player down the course of the rest of the season. So we're down to the last 9 games of the regular season for the Storm. They sit at a 9-win, 21-loss record, 10th in the league, 5th in the Western Conference. Looking ahead, they close out this 4-game homestand with a battle against the Minnesota Lynx. Minnesota, a team that struggled heavily to begin the season, but has now found themselves much better at this current point in time. I believe they sit in a playoff spot. Their next game, August 18th versus Minnesota, a 7 p.m. Pacific time tip-off. That is on Ion. And then game 2 of this upcoming week, first game on the road, is also against the Minnesota Lynx on August 20th. That's a 4 o'clock start. That is on NBA TV and Amazon Prime Video if you are in the state of Washington. We're going to move over here. These are almost like non-updates. Nothing going on with our Sounders over the course of the past week. Some players are getting back into training, which is positive, but we won't, have for sure updates until we get closer to match day. Match day for the Sounders next is August 20th versus Atlanta United with a 7:30 p.m. start. That is a 7:30 p.m. start there at Lumen Field. As the Sounders, after getting booted out of the Leagues Cup after a loss to Monterrey, and struggling since the month of May really to find footing in their regular season play. We'll get back to that regular season play when they host Atlanta United. In the same sort of vein, nothing going on with the Kraken, nothing going on with the Reign here, as they have a little bit of a break. Their next matchup, though, is on August 18th when they head out on the road, and they also resume NWSL regular season play August 18th at the Kansas City Current with a 5 p.m. Pacific time start time. The Reign will get back to action. A bunch of players will be all of the Reign players are back from the World Cup, but it's unsure when the players from Team USA and Team Canada will be ready to get back into game action. Jess Fishlock should be ready for the August 18th game, but that's not a certainty. We're going to close out this team-related section with the Seattle Seawolves. This morning, actually, the Seawolves made a trade. They acquired back row Devin Short from the NOLA Gold. In the trade, the NOLA Gold acquired salary considerations and the 11th overall pick in this year's collegiate draft. So the Seawolves opt to not go ahead and add to their younger reserves, and they get Devin Short. Now, this is an interesting trade. NOLA has kind of been all over the place in terms of where they've been at this season. Devin Short had some high praise from head coach and director of rugby, Alan Clark. While at NOLA, he earned his 50th MLR cap, and he was the Gold's Forward of the Year back in 2021. He did go to college to play football, but ended up playing rugby. He explained that rugby gave me the opportunity to run the ball, make tackles. I got to lose the patch, which I always thought hindered me. So, hate to each their own. Coach Clark said that once the opportunity to sign a young American player of Devin's quality and ambition became apparent, it was easy to move quickly. He's dynamic with the skill sets and mindset to be a standout player in the MLR. So, again, he sounded very excited there to add Devin Short. He is 25, 6'3", 220 pounds out of Las Vegas, Nevada. He had participated in the Next Olympic Hopeful project in the U.S. Olympic Training Center and did win that. He was then selected for the USA Falcons South American tour to the Punta del Este Sevens and the Vica del Mar Sevens. While he was training in Chula Vista, Short caught the attention of the San Diego Legion, joining the team back in 2018. He spent 3 seasons there and was traded to NOLA in 2021. So, welcome to Seattle, Devin Short. We're going to close things out here with our star of the week. And just because of her consistent performance and how she's really been able to step into her role this season as the secondary scorer and Seattle's second best player, Ezzy Magbegor also celebrated her birthday yesterday, her 24th birthday. She is the 3rd youngest player on this Storm team, and she's been in the league, I think, 4 years now, which is somewhat remarkable. So Ezzy, again, we talked about her stats over the course of the past week, has been big for Seattle as Jewel Lloyd, outside of this last game against the Mercury, Jewel Lloyd has kind of struggled to find an efficient shooting form. And Ezzy's one of these leaders now, which is funny because she's been one of the younger players on this team. She had a great start to the year last season before the Storm added Tina Charles and put her into the lineup, kind of stunting that development that she had going on. But now it's been Ezzy's starting job through the course of the year. And she's going to be a big role in this team going forward, whether or not they are able to bring back Jewel Lloyd or not this current offseason. So until we see you next week, we're going to be, late into August. I hope it's going to cool down, but I've been told it's going to be very hot for the next 3 days. So the Seahawks will continue their preseason next week, hosting the Dallas Cowboys here at Lumen Field. The Mariners are going to be on the road. Again, they've got to take care of business. They have a very fortunate end of August that they have to take advantage of. The Storm are going to continue their regular season. In the last 9 games of the regular season for them. The Sounders get back to action. The Reign get back to action. We're getting closer and closer to Kraken training camp, so hockey's coming back soon. The Seawolves are in their off season. All in all, take care of yourselves, be well, and do whatever you can to make today a great day.